$5 for domestic or regional travel, or $10 for international travel to help save the planet, so that the people who benefit and whose children and grandchildren will benefit feel that they too are making a difference in the effort to save the world. And if you took it to pharmaceuticals and to pandemic, you would expect them to put their part. And if you took it to digital illiteracy, you would expect those companies that now have market capitalization.
Hello everyone, welcome to Sachin Reaction. If this is your very first time here, I want to personally welcome you to the channel. This is a brand new community where we'll react to powerful speeches, important global events, inspiring stories, and conversations that matter, not just the Caribbean, but to Africa and the rest of the world as well. Here, we don't just watch videos, we break them down, analyze the message, and have respectful discussions together. If that's the kind of content you enjoy, make sure you hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and join us from the very beginning of this exciting journey. Today's video is incredibly special because we are starting this channel with one of the most respected voices in Caribbean leadership. We are talking about Barbados Prime Minister Mia Mottley. Whether you agree with everything she says or not, one thing is undeniable. When Mia Mottley speaks, the world pays attention. Today she discusses the future of the Caribbean, economic reform, climate change, global financial institutions, regional unity, and why Caribbean nations must stand together in a rapidly changing world. These are issues that affect millions of people, including Jamaica, Barbados, Trinidad and Tobago, Guyana, and the wider Caribbean. Before we begin, I want to give full credit to the original creators and owner of this speech. This reaction is being shared for commentary, education, and discussion purposes. Now, let's hear what Prime Minister Mia Mottley has to say.
In the trillions of dollars to leave a little something on the table so that we can secure we're not going to make all the SDGs by 2030, but we must now prioritize to build the bridges that will unlock the rest. And that must mean fighting hunger and poverty. That must mean providing education across the world. That must mean ensuring that we have the technical capacity to unfold the benefit of renewable energy while at the same time creating the opportunities for green investment, because foreign capital alone will only make us tenants in our own land, and therefore the domestic resource mobilization and the aggregation of capital is necessary to balance the equation so our own citizens do not become tenants in their own land. I say these things because I genuinely believe that in the same way we saw over centuries the evolution of the joint stock company, in the same way we saw over centuries the emergence of the nation state, in the same way that we recognize that this is the beginning of the end of a current world order, that we have to be prepared to recognize and to determine what are the things that are necessary to secure lives and livelihoods, people and planet, without being wed to systems that are no longer working for us and that were made in the image of people who only want to dominate and exploit. That is the spirit of Michael Manley and the word of love being practiced. I say to you today that when all of that is combined, we still have to come back home to the most basic and elemental of truths. That you and you and you and you and you and me have first always to summon the courage and to look in the mirror and to believe, as Errol Barrow said, in our mirror image. To believe, as Marcus Garvey said, that it is critical that we emancipate ourselves from mental slavery. And we forge the strength and courage to develop the confidence, not just simply to say that no man is better than me and I am not better than any man, because our people now accept that. But coming with those rights now come responsibilities, because there is no right that can exist forever without a responsibility to tend to the things. A house, this building, you leave it unchecked and unattended for. and it starts to fall. You leave your body unattended for it, atrophies. And we as a region have a duty to have mature conversations, first, to begin to understand how we can reclaim the mental landscape of our own citizens, recognizing, as I did in a CARICOM Ministers of Culture meeting as a young senator in this country 33, 34 years ago, that we will never be able to stop information from flowing in unless we close down our society, and it's not practical. So that what we must do is root our people, so that when the gale force winds start to blow, the trees may bend, but they will not break. The roots are complex, and the educational system needs to be transformed to ensure, as difficult as it is, and believe you me, as I go through this process in Barbados, I know it is difficult, because nobody wants to feel as though they are on the front line of change, particularly when the change may have implications for their own household. But in the same way that a person who is a diabetic recognizes that if I don't make that decision to sacrifice a toe, I may make the foot or the leg, or worse than that, the body through sepsis, at risk. We as a region need to understand that the price of freedom is also equally the anchoring of responsibility in this Caribbean region. And that in truth and in fact, we are in the throes of an inflection point, a historic movement that really, today, causes us to have to pause. And the danger is that we might be at risk of being distracted from the fundamental things that truly make a difference to our planet and to our people, and by extension, to our Caribbean civilization. The reality is that what we are witnessing, in my view, is really the dying of an old order without yet seeing where the new order will be located and how it will be framed. The Italian philosopher Antonio Gramsci wrote in his famous prison notebooks, and I quote, "The old world is dying, and the new world struggles to be born. Now is the time of monsters," unquote. And what are those monsters today? Is it the climate crisis? I don't refer to it as climate change, because there's nothing about change in the crisis that we face. It is a season of superlatives, and it's the season of the unexpected. We see it from the droughts, to the floods, to the hurricanes, to the sargassum seaweed, to so many other things that are so unrealistic. I'm accustomed to convection rain here in Kingston, not in Bridgetown. For the last 2 years, we experienced that from August to December, almost 5 days a week. While at the same time, for the first 6 months of last year, we had less than 50% rainfall of the average 30 years that went before, in the same year. The monsters are the pandemics. And we acknowledge that with the increased heat, we are likely to see new pathogens develop, and by extension, new pandemics are likely to emerge. But even as we speak, separate from that, our abuse of antibiotics, antimicrobials, has led to an extraordinary level of antimicrobial resistance that now makes that responsible for the third highest number of deaths directly and indirectly in the world, and by 2050, it shall be responsible for the highest volume of deaths in the world, reversing a century of medical progress and making simple things like going to the dentist or going in the garden or having a baby. Risky things if you get an infection. We have seen environmental degradation generally, but in particular degradation of our soils. And there is the belief that it will considerably impact the already threatened food security that we have as a result of the impact of climate itself. But soil degradation in and of itself will make it worse. We are seeing the collapse of ecosystems and the collapse of and further loss of biodiversity. Things that we were accustomed to seeing are finding themselves removed from our environment. And at the same time, globally, we have 35 million people, refugees, across the world, fleeing wars, violence, persecution, and abject poverty, right here in our own region to across the world. The world itself is a dangerous place to be. The 1st of December, France had a government, as did Syria. Today, the 10th of December, both have been gone for a few days. One by law and one by force. We are at an interesting point. We hear of the movement against incumbents more than anything else. Some of it expresses itself in right-wing populism, some of it in the UK, left of center. But in both instances, it's an anti-incumbent move, largely because much of what people have had to experience in this polycrisis moment in the last 5 years has made life difficult for most and perplexing for all. The spectacle of fake news and the inability to control a narrative to build a nation, where broadcasting used to be the order of the day and now narrowcasting and echo chambers replace it. We have more than ever to determine what does love look like in this, the third decade of the 21st century. And because time limits me, I'll just address a few matters. One, as it relates to regional integration and foreign policy. Two, as it relates to the reform of the international financial system and by extension our capacity to meet the global public goods that are critical for our survival on the planet as people. And finally, the utter and absolute importance as Caribbean people of the psychological reinforcement of our cultural identity to give us purpose and to give us unity and solidarity to weather these difficult times as the New World Order finds itself emerging. May not be for a few decades, maybe as soon as the next 5-10 years. And it is slow upon us when all of a sudden, as we saw in Syria, it is immediately upon us. And that is the nature of the world in which we live today, where the powers that influence and the information that is generated goes way beyond the nation state. And to that extent, on this day of International Human Rights Day, one asks yourself, what will that new world order look like? And what will truly be the power of nation states? Will small states be able to survive without deep functional cooperation and pooling? Or will they become collateral victims as the world seeks to line up behind great powers yet again? Particularly if the multilateral rules-based system that we have is not allowed to work for us. I say to you that it is critical that we not be sucked in to the bankruptcy of the current global world order. And if we go back to what love was for Michael Manley, and I'm amazed at the extent to which even the language used foretold the times in which we come to live in. There is no doubt that we are in a race against time, and those who doubt it will fail to prepare. And that, for us, means that we recognize that love fundamentally is about caring, seeing, hearing, and feeling. Fundamentally is about resilience, a word that Michael used more ahead of his time than most. And love is about transformation. We have taken long to do some of these things, not because of laziness, but because of the complexity of the root system that has caused us to be victims of another order that effectively took away from us identity and movement. And I dare say that so fundamental is the human resistance against that type of activity that I really believe that that is one of the reasons for the strong anti-incumbent movement globally, coming after 2 to 3 years of restricted movement and increased cost of living, where persons are trying to recoup losses in the shortest possible time from a pandemic, that has caused people to say, hey, you didn't see me for a few years, but watch me now, I'm here. And if you don't realize I'm here, I'm going to show you that I'm here. And we've seen it country by country by country by country. But if we come to understanding what that race to become resilient must look like, it is being thrown at us more than ever through the climate crisis. And that is why, in a very real sense, the global south, in its victimhood, has a renewed sense of solidarity, because we all know that we didn't cause the problem, and that in fact we are now bearing double jeopardy, because having been the beast of burden to enrich those who built the Industrial Revolution, we are now the first victims on the front line to the consequences of the Industrial Revolution in terms of greenhouse warming.
Welcome back. Right away, you can feel the confidence in her voice. She's not speaking as someone trying to impress people. She's speaking like someone who genuinely believes the Caribbean deserves a stronger place in the world. And honestly, that's refreshing. For too long, many small island nations have been treated as if their voices don't matter, simply because of their size. But Mia Mottley reminds us that leadership isn't measured by landmass, it's measured by vision. A country can be small geographically while having enormous influence globally. We've seen this happen before. The Caribbean has produced world-class athletes, musicians, scholars, entrepreneurs, and political leaders. Why shouldn't it also shape global conversations? That's exactly the confidence she's encouraging. Now she's talking about economic reform. This is something many people don't fully understand. Economic systems created decades ago don't always work for today's realities. Many developing countries continue paying enormous debts while also trying to improve healthcare, education, housing, and infrastructure. Imagine trying to build your future while carrying heavy financial burdens every single year. That's the challenge many nations face. Mia Mottley argues that international financial systems should become fairer, not because countries want handouts, but because they want opportunities. Opportunities to grow, to invest, to compete fairly. That's an important distinction. Economic justice isn't about asking for charity. It's about creating equal chances. Now, she shifts to climate change. This is probably one of the issues she's become most recognized for internationally. While hurricanes strike the Caribbean, This damage can erase decades of development within hours. Roads disappear, schools are destroyed, businesses collapse, families lose everything. Yet, many Caribbean nations contribute only a tiny fraction of global carbon emissions. That's why she argues that those most affected often contributed the least to the problem. Whether someone agrees with every policy or not, it's difficult to ignore the reality that climate disasters place enormous pressure on island economies. Recovery takes years, sometimes decades, and every disaster makes development even harder. Now she is emphasizing unity. This may be one of the strongest parts of her speech. Instead of countries competing against one another, she encourages cooperation. Imagine what could happen if Caribbean nations shared more technology, supported each other's businesses, expanded regional trade, strengthened education partnerships, worked together on disaster preparedness, shared tourism opportunities. That kind of collaboration creates strength. History has shown that divided regions often struggle more than united ones. Unity doesn't mean losing national identity. It means recognizing common interests. Jamaica remains Jamaica, Barbados remains Barbados. But together, their voices become louder. Now she is speaking directly about leadership. This isn't just about governments, it's about responsibility. Real leadership isn't always popular. Sometimes leaders must make difficult decisions. Sometimes they must speak uncomfortable truths. Sometimes they must think beyond the next election and focus on the next generation. That takes courage. Whether you are leading a country, a company, a school, or even a family, leadership always comes with responsibility. People depend on your decisions. That's why integrity matters. Vision matters, preparation matters. Listening to this speech, one message keeps standing out: hope. Not blind optimism, but determined hope. They believe that small nations can achieve greater things through smart leadership, cooperation, and long term planning. The Caribbean has incredible talent, amazing culture, creative people, natural beauty, strong history. The question isn't whether Caribbean has potential. The question is whether that potential can be fully developed through unity, investment, and effective leadership. That's a conversation worth having. What an incredible speech! Whether you agree with every point Mia Mottley made or not, she has certainly given people around the world something to think about. Now, I'd love to hear from you. Do you agree with her message? Do you think the Caribbean needs stronger regional unity? Should global financial institutions change the way they support developing nations? What role should leaders play in preparing their countries for the future? Let's keep the discussion respectful in the comments below. If you enjoyed this reaction, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notification, because this is just the beginning of Sachin reaction. Thank you so much for watching our very first video. Your support means everything, and I truly appreciate you being here from day one. Take care, stay safe, and I'll see you in the next reaction. Peace.